Hello, everybody, and welcome to Live from NCCE. My name is Jeff Bradbury. Thank you so much for joining us and making NCCE your home for professional development. My name is Jeff Bradbury, and I am so excited because next week we have the live NCCE conference coming to you on March 17th through the 20th, a virtual experience like no other. I am so excited to not only be presenting, but to be checking out some of the great stuff happening at the conference. Of course, our featured keynote speaker, Jenny McGuire, is going to be talking all about some of the great things that are going on and her experiences in the world of Google education. And there are so many great sessions. We want to bring on today a guest, and I am excited to have her on. She's doing 8 amazing presentations. I want to bring on the amazing library girl herself, Miss Jennifer. How are you today, Jennifer?
Hey, I'm fine, Jeff. It's so nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
Jennifer Lagarde, I am so happy to have you guys here. Library girl, talking all about some of the great things that's going on. But before we get to that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I live and work and drink a lot of coffee in Olympia, Washington, but most people may know me from my work in North Carolina, where I did those things for almost 30 years. I was a public educator for 20 of those years, and then have been working to support school librarians, public librarians, and school technologists around the world to really help create literacy-rich, technology-amplified learning experiences for kids.
I am so excited to have you on today. We have a lot of things in common. The more that I read about you, check out your blog over at librarygirl.net. You and I have both been in the education space for about 20 years. I got to start with this. How are you doing? How is your school? Clearly, we just got done the year that was. We're not done yet, but tell us a little bit about what life looks like in your building and your teachers and all that good stuff. What do things look like for you these days?
Well, I'm no longer in a building. I work remotely with teachers and adult learners now, but it's been a whole year since I've gotten to be in schools with teachers doing that work with them, which I'm sure a lot of people watching this feel that big hole in their heart of not being able to be face to face with their communities. But what I can tell you is from what I'm hearing is that people miss kids and they miss the camaraderie of their school communities. And B, while this has been trial by fire, the last 12 months, depending on where you are in the country or in the world, has really forced people to think about ways to leverage technology in more than just the shiny, this is fun or might help us with assessment way, and in really deep, meaningful, rich ways. And they've discovered and improved and created really exciting experiences for kids that I think now people, and this is the really exciting part, people are looking ahead to when we are back in our buildings working with kids, how do we keep the best of what we've done in the last few months and continue to use these tools to make things even better for kids?
I couldn't agree more. I had a meeting today with our admin and some other educational consultants, and we came up with this concept that we are looking into the future, but we are kind of looking at it with a lens from the past. One of the things that we're talking about in our coaching circles is how do we stop our teachers from really going backwards once they hit the classroom? How do we keep them moving forward? Talk to us a little bit about some of the things that you're looking forward to as you start to see students and teachers start entering the classes. And really, we don't want them to get back into normalcy. We want them to continue to move forward with everything.
Right. Well, one of the things I've been reflecting on over the last 12 months is how the pandemic and the ways that it's forced schools to pivot has really revealed, rather than causing, but revealed some of the inequities that have always existed in school systems that present barriers for our families and our kids from accessing not just resources, but also just environments and conditions that are conducive to learning. And so what I'm really hopeful and excited about is that coming back to school, that we're going to be able to take all of our collective knowledge, because we've all learned a lot during these last 12 months, and figure out ways to use technology to cast a wider net. so that way we don't go back to the pre-pandemic world in which those inequities always existed, but maybe they weren't as amplified or as illuminated as they are now, but rather take what we know worked then and add to it with what we've been able to develop as working now, so that we can cast a wider net to capture more of our communities and families and experiences that are really meaningful, and and help them grow as learners and as humans. Speaking from the library world, and I'll just take a second to add this, is that I've been so it makes me emotional when I think about the ways that teacher librarians have really stepped up and changed their roles to be not only supports to teachers and admins, but really conduits to help connect teachers with pedagogy and instructional goals with communities that have needs and desires for kids to be learning and continuing to grow during this crazy time. And teacher librarians have thrown away the playbook and written an entirely new playbook based on what they already know in their existing strengths to help make that happen. And I've been so proud to be a part of that community. I'm excited to see where they take it next.
I want to ask you a quick question here in
Mm-hmm.
reference to some of the things I'm hearing you say. And, we have an opportunity, we both have an opportunity to work with, school districts from across the country and across the world.
Yes.
You're using a few different terms here. I've heard you say the word librarian. I've heard you use the word teacher librarian. I've
Yes.
heard people use the word media center specialist or library media center specialist. From your point of view, are these the same people? Are these different jobs? Are these different jobs? What is the difference? What are the terms? What should school districts be looking at having in that particular room in their buildings?
Okay, so a rose by any other name. This is a conversation I've written about extensively and could have. I think the reason we see a lot of flux in names across the country is because the word librarian itself can sometimes be associated with sort of a bygone era in which we have these quaint, quiet libraries with dusty bookshelves full of old ancient tombs for people to access. And so the name changes have evolved to try to reflect an evolving and emerging role. But whether you call them a teacher librarian, or a librarian, a school library media specialist, a innovation coach, or whatever, I've heard all sorts of things. Essentially, what you need in that role is someone who is certified to be that position, to be a teacher librarian, who has an understanding of and knowledge both of children's literature and of what it takes to grow a reader, as well as an understanding and knowledge of how to use instructional technology to achieve those goals. A school librarian, teacher librarian, school library media specialist, no matter what you call them, those people have a school-wide, sometimes even district-wide view of the literacy needs of kids, and can bring to bear both their understanding of the content and the pedagogical tools that can really help them engage readers in rich and robust instruction and independent reading lives that fuel them to become readers for the rest of their lives. Plus, one of my personal passions, they are really the only person in the building for whom information and news literacy is part of their training. So they really are more vital than ever, and you can call them anything you want as long as you have one.
Is a teacher, librarian, media center, is that something you can train somebody into? Can you provide professional development? I'll give you the scenario here. We've both been in education for 20 years. This title, this role, this place where kids go and it's fun wasn't the same position that we had 20 years ago. But
True.
for some school districts, it might be the same human that we've had. Talk to the coaches, talk to the administrators out there watching. Let's say that you have somebody that really is looking to get professional development. What is the best way to help somebody who's sitting in that room become a teacher, librarian? You know the words,
Yes.
right?
I do. I know exactly what you're talking about. This has been a role that has very much evolved in the last 2 decades to meet the needs of more digital age learners, while also staying rooted in the foundational goals of helping kids become readers. It's interesting because the foundation, the ethos, the things that underpin what it means to be a librarian, a school library media specialist, haven't changed. The idea of source evaluation and being able to conduct research and find the best content online and make decisions about that, or even in print, etc., that's a foundational skill. And also the role of the teacher librarian of helping kids become lifelong readers and thinkers, those things have remained the same.
Mm-hmm.
But the tools that we use to do that, and the implications and the forces from outside, the ways in which technology has changed to make our kids not only information consumers 24/7, but also information creators, etc. Those things really have help to shift the ways in which teacher librarians do their job. So to answer your question more directly, then yes, anybody who has a willingness to learn and to evolve into that changing role can absolutely do it in a number of ways. One of the things that's so rewarding about being a librarian in the year 2021 is that teacher librarians have a massive, active, incredibly supportive PLN online full of librarians from around the world who share best practices, who support people, support each other, who are willing to collaborate. So if you are in a building and you want your teacher librarian or think your teacher librarian, maybe it's time for them to evolve into the next stage of that role, then one of the first things I would encourage them to do is think about developing that PLN so they can ask some good questions about what's next and then figure out the best ways to do that for themselves.
You know, we have a lot of people out here listening right now, and Holland has said it is the hub of the school. I highly think that's the right way of looking at things. I mean, I know in my school district, we're looking at making the library media center position the hub of the school, the pinnacle of everybody, you know, the water cooler, if you will, as we go through here. One of the things that we're always looking at doing is trying to figure out how can we best support each other? How do we find that great professional development? I have a theory, Jen, and I think that theory is by signing up and joining us next week for the NCCE conference. Of course, we're going to be here live all next week from March 17th through the 20th. And of course, you can go on over to ncce.org/conference21. Let me tell you guys, if you guys are watching right now and you're live, please do me a favor, put in the comments, number one, tell us that you're going to go. Number two, tell us what your favorite part of the conference is and what you're looking forward to the most. Jen, I've got a couple sessions that I'm looking forward to, but you have a lot of sessions going on. I wanted to see if we can talk about some of your sessions in particular, because I'm excited. I'm going to be signing up for some of these sessions. The one that I'm looking forward to the most, the one I know I'm going to be bringing back to my library media specialists, is the one that you have here called Creating Great Library Websites for Today's Learners. Talk to us a little bit about that session.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, before I speak to that session, I just want to make a confession. This is my first NCCE. Because I lived in North Carolina for so long, I didn't live in the Northwest or even know it was available. So now I'm so excited to finally be able to be a part of it and to learn and share and to join this community. And I'm just really grateful to everybody who's going to be joining us as well. But that being said, that particular website is that particular session, that presentation is really a point of passion to me, because in my own work with school districts around the country, one of the things I love to do when a school district might ask me to come in and work with their librarians, in the week before, I stalk all of their school library websites to see what's on there, to see if I can get sort of a hint. And here's what I find a lot of times. It's like some GeoCities website with like crickets and animated GIFs or whatever, or it's just a link to the card catalog, because sometimes busy teachers, including teacher librarians, they make the website because it's a requirement. And especially when we're not living during a pandemic and everybody's doing remote learning, they forget about it because other things take precedent. You know, we have other fires to put out, etc. And I feel like that's a missed opportunity, because in addition to a website potentially being sort of our business card for people who want to learn more about what we do, they also have the opportunity to be spaces where our communities gather, not only to get resources, but to share resources, to have conversations, and to feel connected to not only the library, but to each other. And it's an opportunity then for the librarian to be that sort of epicenter reader, that epicenter learner, to borrow the phrase from Donald Miller. So I think these spaces, with just a little bit of tweaking, can be really magical. And so that session's really about a safe space for existing practitioners to bring their own website and to sort of think about, and compare theirs with some of the elements that I'm going to talk about can be really critical in helping create those community spaces that a website can be, to sort of see how theirs match up and then walk away with some strategies for filling in gaps that they might identify.
I love that. And I love any session that's out there where someone's going to not only be able to take things away, but even during the session can be sitting there,
Yes.
tinkering on their own website, figuring out. And I asked you the question before we recorded, and I want you to answer it here. What are the platforms you're going to be focusing on specifically?
Any and all platform. It's very platform neutral.
Love the
If
answer.
you have a web, if your district requires you use a certain web editor, then you'll be able to do it there. If you are out there rogue using whatever is your favorite web editor of choice, you'll be able to participate as well. So any and all.
Now, the next one here I'm excited about. It says helping real readers create remote reading lives. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Oh gosh. I mean, here's the thing about reading. People in this room, I see a lot of friends in this room, and I'm so excited to know that they're going to be in these sessions. A lot of those folks know that the work of my heart is about helping kids become readers, because we know we have decades of research that show that kids who are readers are not only academically more successful than their counterparts, but they really benefit in a number of, I feel like, honestly, more important ways than just their test scores. Kids who read, reading has been proven to reduce stress. Kids who read grow up to be more philanthropic. Kids who read grow up to have longer, healthier relationships. I mean, we have so much research, decades and decades of research that help us understand that kids who become readers grow into better adult human beings. And oh my gosh, Jeff, in 2021, our world is hungry for better human beings. And so in this pandemic where we're all working remotely or having to reach kids in new ways, what this session really is about is helping us still focus on the things that are important around reading, but harness the technology to do that.
And combining those two is exactly where our students are. And that's why I'm excited about this next one here. And I, as the father of triplets, I can't do a broadcast without talking about the triplets, of course. Fact versus fiction, strategies for building digital detectives for elementary learners. This one, I'm not only bringing my teacher and my coaching hat, I'm going to be bringing my dad hat onto this one.
This work has really been the focus of my life for the last nearly 6 years. In the lead up to the last presidential election, well, let me say this, the 2016 presidential election. In the lead up to that, as just a human being, seeing the way that misinformation, information that was designed to trick and influence us, and was the way that was affecting us not only as voters or citizens, but more primarily as human beings who were struggling to maintain relationships because of a divide that was fueled by this misinformation. I felt like, as somebody who, as a librarian, information evaluation is sort of in my wheelhouse, I have the choice to either continue to grumble about how crazy this is, or I can do something about it. And so I decided to do the latter. And that's what led to my first book with Darren Hudgens called Fact versus Fiction, Teaching Critical Thinking Skills in the Age of Fake News. In the years following that publication, I worked with districts all around the world to create curricula for K-12 learners around news and information literacy. And here's what one of my biggest takeaways from that time was that while the theory behind mis and dis and malinformation is important, and while existing resources in that wheelhouse can be useful, two things. One, teachers and librarians are hungry for lesson plans. And two, those resources that have been sort of held up as the best in terms of information literacy resources that we've been using for years have been around since before the first iPhone was created, since before social media existed. They were created during a time where we couldn't have envisioned the information literacy landscape that we have now. So the last 2 years have been working on that second book, which is full of unit plans and lessons and mini lessons, et cetera, for K-12 learners. And so this session is about showing teachers how to do it. I think educators at this point, like you, Jeff, recognize this is a huge issue, perhaps the issue facing us as a species. is how information that's been designed to influence and fool us really is feeding into all the crises we face as human beings. What now the question is, what are we going to do about it, and how do we tackle it even with youngest learners? And that's what the session is about. And I'm real excited because this is just like the work of my, if literacy is the work of my heart, then information literacy is the work of my head. So it's really, really a fun step for me to tackle.
Wait, say that one more time. That deserves to be on a t-shirt.
If literacy or reading is the work of my heart, then information literacy is the work of my head.
Your website, of course, is librarygirl.net, and anybody who is in this field needs to be checking this stuff out. So many good things. Talk to us a little bit about your library website here, because, you know, we're talking about finding great resources, creating great resources. You've got one of your own here. Talk to us a little bit about some of the great things that we can find over at librarygirl.net.
Well, you know, I started blogging about 112 years ago. I was the first, and this is really going to make me sound old, but I was the very first teacher in my school building 212 years ago to even have a website. And over time, I've seen them evolve, but I can't, even though there's debates, it feels like every year about whether or not blogs are still really a thing, or whether or not with social media we even need websites, etc. I continue to invest in that space because it helps me create community amongst people who are interested and have an intellectual curiosity around the same things that I do. It allows me to really, I mean, I think those spaces are value statements because they allow us to share what we value. I don't have my resume on there. I'm not interested in, you know, touting my professional accomplishments. Rather, I'm interested in saying, this is what I'm about. This is what I believe in. And everything here is in support of that work. And if you feel like you believe in those things too, or even adjacent, then come on. I'm inviting you to my party. Let's get this done. Let's change the world. So that really is the impetus for my website. And it's a place that I still continue to love.
I love that statement about let's come to my party. And Jen, do you know when that party starts?
It starts at NCCE.
Join us live.
Woo-hoo!
March 17th through 20th. It is the NCCE conference over at ncce.org/conference 2021. Would love to have you guys join us. If you are in the audience right now listening on YouTube, on Facebook, please let us know. Wave your flag. Give us a woohoo. I know you're out there listening, Jim. Please let us know that you're out there. We would love to hear what you guys think. If you have any questions, as we're wrapping up here with the great Jennifer Lagarde, give your questions right now. We're going to ask Jen a couple of the questions here coming from the audience. So put your comments in before we get out of here. Jen, you know, we've got these virtual conferences coming up. We're looking forward to more great virtual conferences through the year, through the summertime. Virtual conferences. Why is it important that teachers, educators, everybody attend these conferences? Why do we want to be doing this even on a Saturday? Why is this important?
Yeah, you know, I think it's only just begun to emerge, but there is already emerging data around the mental health toll that the last 12 months have taken on all of us. The physical separation from our colleagues, from sometimes our families, from the even interaction at the grocery store. While so many of us have willingly done that to try to protect our neighbors from catching a virus, it also takes a toll. No matter how voluntary your participation in that is, it takes a toll. Being separated from other human beings is not our natural way of being. Human beings crave connection. They crave story. They crave being together. And so virtual conferences, in lieu of being able to come together and all hang out in the lobby of whatever hotel is hosting the conference, is a way for us to continue to be connected with our colleagues, to share the stories of what's worked over the last 12 months, and to also commiserate with some of the challenges that we face, to know that we're not alone. Those messages and that sort of virtual hug is more important than ever, and I think will serve us well when we're all able to gather together again, and be able to remember what it was like when we only had each other this way, and how thankful we were for that opportunity then.
Got a couple questions coming in from Holland here. Holland Child, what is your favorite children's book?
That's a ridiculous question. That's like asking Jeff to pick his favorite child. Like,
No, I have one of
man.
those. Trust me, I have one of those.
I will answer the question in terms of like, what is my favorite children's book right now, like right in this moment. I'm very excited for the release of Corinna Lucan's The Tree in Me, and Corinna is actually a Washington State author. She has a new picture book that's coming out this month called The Tree in Me, which is all about connectedness and seeing the things that we have in common versus the things that divide us or separate us. And so it's really beautiful, and I'm so excited for the world to see it. And even though I'm known as sort of a young adult literature person, I love picture books too, and this one is really magical.
Harry Potter, Hunger Games, Lord of the Rings. Pick one.
None. I will choose His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman instead, which is my favorite dystopian fantasy. Although I have some Harry Potter stuff up here. And while I'm not a huge fan of J.K. Rowling these days, I still love the Potterverse. My favorite fantasy series is His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman.
So I'll throw a similar question, but doing it in a different way. Literature character you'd most want to have a pop figure of?
Oh, well, I have some of those probably. If I'd known those, but I was looking at my bookshelf over there. Gosh, let's see. Literature character that I'd most like to have a pop figure of. I think I would love to. This is going to be a real deep reference. Like only real YA readers are going to know this, but I think I might like to have Dill from Jeff Zentner's The Serpent King, who is a musician slash trying to find himself angsty teenager who really overcomes tremendous obstacles to follow his dreams. And I just really love him. So maybe that.
Nice. Let's do one more question from the audience here. What advice would you give an early career teacher that wanted to integrate more information literacy lessons into a secondary content classroom?
Okay, secondary content classroom. All right, so gosh, I love this question so much. I think the first piece of advice, which I'm really going to build on in all of my information literacy sessions, is to start all of these conversations with the question of how does this information make me feel? One of the pieces that is missing from news and information literacy instruction traditionally is its connection to social emotional learning. And one of the things I'm going to talk about in depth during my sessions is why this is, and how an information landscape in which we as consumers want things to be free and expect to not pay for information anymore puts journalists and all content creators in the position of having to trigger our emotions in order to get us to click and to share and to like, etc. And so starting with that question of how does this make me feel will help learners then identify and look for some of the strategies that are designed to get us to click and to share and to like and to interact and increase those engagement metrics without really thinking about it, because our emotional brain takes over instead of the logical brain. So no matter what content you're in, starting with that social emotional learning piece and looking for content, whether it's historical or it's content that exists now. So whether you're talking about propaganda from World War II, or you're talking about the video from the Gorilla Glue girl who glued the hair, her own hair with Gorilla Glue, no matter what the content is, kids can then unpack it and think, how is this designed to make me feel? How does it make me feel? And so what are the elements there, sort of red flags that I can look for as something that's telling me to press pause before I share, like, or trust it?
Talking today to Jennifer Lagarde about the great stuff that she's doing. I have one more question for you, Jennifer. Sure. What conference happening next week should every educator be coming to, and where can they learn more information about it?
Geez, gosh, that's a tough one, Jeff. Obviously, it's NCCE. The website, the URL, I think is on your screen, but it's ncee.org. From there, you'll be able to find a link to the conference. Register if you haven't already. Come see us. We're going to have a great time, but more than that, we're going to learn a lot, and we're really going to dig into the work of making this world better for kids.
Hope you guys have a chance to check us out next week. Don't forget, because of the conference, by the way, did you know we're having a conference next week? There won't be any episode of Live from NCCE. That's because the conference will be happening. Check it out right now, ncce.org/conference 2021. Register today. It is going to be an amazing conference. I've got 2 sessions we haven't even talked about yet. Jenny McGeer is going to be there. Jen's going to have some great stuff. And I got to tell you, I am so excited to see presentations by people like Tammy Dunbar, by people like, Darren Clay, Anthony Newbold, Joe Sanfilippo, just to name a quick few. Lots of great stuff that's going to be up there. We want to say thank you to all of our friends at NCCE, from Shannon to Heidi to Jim to Jason to Mike. Guys, it is going to be a great time next week. We are going to have a good time. And on that, Jen, one last time, I'll let you do the sign out here. Tell us where we can learn more information about you. Plug that website one more time, my friend.
LibraryGirl.net, or follow me on Twitter at Jen Lagarde.
And that wraps up this episode of Live from NCCE. On behalf of everybody here on the NCCE staff, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you guys to keep up the great work. Don't forget to go to the NCCE conference and continue sharing your passions with your students.